Imagine you've been tracking the same rabbit for 3 hours. You followed its trail through the brush, watched where it doubled back, memorized the exact path it takes to its burrow every evening, and every single time you get close enough to strike, it's gone. Faster than your arm, faster than your spear, gone into a hole in the ground you can't reach. Now multiply that by every small, fast animal in the landscape around you. Rabbits, squirrels, birds, foxes, all of them faster than you, all of them smarter about escaping in the exact moment you need them not to be. You could spend your entire day chasing one rabbit and go home with nothing, while your children wait for food that never comes. There's a better way to hunt, and it doesn't involve chasing anything at all. It involves making the animal walk into its own death without you even being there when it happens. And figuring that out might be one of the most quietly brilliant things early humans ever did. Today, if you want meat, you go to a store. The animal is already dead, processed, wrapped in plastic, and the actual difficulty of catching it has been completely erased from your experience. But for most of human history, catching fast, small, cautious animals was one of the hardest calorie-to-effort problems a person could face. Big game hunting gets all the attention in documentaries: mammoths, cave bears, dramatic spear throws.
But statistically, small game, rabbits, birds, rodents, was probably a much more consistent part of the ancient human diet, precisely because it was so much more abundant. The problem was never whether the food existed. The problem was catching something that could outrun you, outmaneuver you, and disappear into a space you couldn't follow it into. So how did humans solve a problem that their own bodies simply weren't fast enough to solve directly? They stopped trying to be faster than the animal and started trying to be smarter than it instead.
The earliest evidence for deliberate trapping doesn't come from a trap itself. Traps made of wood, cord, and bent branches don't survive tens of thousands of years the way stone tools do. Instead, the evidence comes from something indirect but genuinely compelling: the bones themselves. At multiple archaeological sites, researchers have found unusually high concentrations of small, fast-moving animal remains, hares, foxes, birds, in locations and quantities that don't match what you'd expect from opportunistic hunting alone. At a site in France called Grotte d'Ouan, dating back over 40,000 years, archaeologists found evidence of systematic small-game exploitation on a scale that strongly suggests something beyond chasing individual animals down. You don't accumulate that many fast, wary animals through pure hand-to-hand pursuit. Something was catching them more efficiently than a person running after them ever could. The concept behind a trap is actually elegant once you see it clearly, and it likely started from watching the animals themselves. Early humans spent enormous amounts of time observing prey, not just to hunt them in the moment, but because survival depended on understanding exactly how an animal behaved, where it slept, what time it moved, which path it took to water every single day without fail. And it's that last part, the fact that animals are creatures of habit, that makes the entire concept of trapping possible.
If a rabbit uses the exact same narrow gap in the brush every single evening to reach its burrow, you don't need to be faster than the rabbit. You just need to be there once, quietly, and set something in that gap that catches it automatically the next time it comes through. The animal does all the work. It walks itself into the trap on its own schedule, completely unaware that anything has changed. The simplest traps were almost certainly deadfalls, a heavy rock or log propped up at an angle with a stick, balanced so precariously that the smallest disturbance would bring it crashing down. Add a bit of bait underneath, something the animal wants enough to nudge the trigger stick, and the trap does the killing without a human anywhere nearby. This is genuinely one of the earliest applications of stored mechanical energy in human history. The person isn't providing the force that kills the animal in the moment. They set that force up hours or days earlier, and it waits, patient and silent, until the animal itself releases it.
From deadfalls, the next major leap was the snare, a simple loop of cord positioned exactly where an animal's head or foot would naturally pass through on its usual path. The snare works on an even more elegant principle. The animal's own movement tightens the trap around itself. The harder it struggles, the tighter the loop becomes. No human strength is involved at all. Just cord, a flexible branch bent under tension, and precise knowledge of exactly where an animal's body would move through a specific gap in the brush. That precision is the real invention here. Not the cord, not the bent stick, but the accumulated behavioral knowledge required to know exactly where to place it. You couldn't randomly set a snare anywhere in the forest and expect it to work. You had to know this specific animal, on this specific trail, at this specific pinch point in the brush, narrow enough that it couldn't walk around the loop. That kind of knowledge takes seasons, maybe years of quiet observation to build up. A trap isn't really a piece of technology in the way we usually think about tools. It's stored knowledge, physically expressed through wood and cord. Pit traps came next, or possibly developed in parallel. A deep hole dug along a known animal path, disguised with a thin covering of branches and leaves so the ground looked solid.
Larger and more dangerous animals could be caught this way, animals too big or too dangerous to approach with the spear directly. Digging a pit deep and wide enough to trap something like a wild boar or even larger game required serious labor, often the coordinated effort of several people working together over days, which tells you something important. By the time pit traps show up, trapping wasn't a solitary skill anymore. It was a group strategy, planned in advance, requiring cooperation and shared knowledge of where an animal would predictably travel. And once traps became a group effort, something else changed too. Traps could be set in numbers. A single hunter with a spear can only be in one place at a time, chasing one animal, but a group setting multiple deadfalls, multiple snares, along multiple known trails could effectively hunt in dozens of places simultaneously, without a single person needing to be physically present at any of them. That's an enormous multiplier on how much food a group could bring in relative to the actual hours spent hunting. This changed the entire rhythm of daily survival. Instead of every able-bodied person spending the entire day chasing food with no guarantee of success, a smaller number of people could check and reset a network of traps each morning, often finding food that had essentially caught itself overnight, while everyone else spent that time on tool-making, childcare, or building shelter. Traps didn't just add more food to the system.
They freed up human time, which may be an even bigger deal than the calories themselves. There's also something worth noting about who could successfully hunt using traps versus who could successfully hunt using raw speed and strength. Chasing down fast prey by hand favors young, physically powerful hunters. Trapping favors patience, memory, and careful observation, skills that don't decline with age nearly as fast as raw physical speed does. Older, more experienced members of a group, people who had spent decades learning the exact habits of local animals, may have become some of the most valuable food providers in the group precisely because of trapping, not despite no longer being able to outrun anything. So the next time you see a simple wire snare, or a hinged mousetrap, or even a basic fishing weir, understand what you're looking at. That's not a modern convenience. That's the direct descendant of one of the smartest realizations early humans ever made, that you don't need to be faster than your prey if you understand its habits well enough to be waiting exactly where it's already going to be. Someone tens of thousands of years ago stopped chasing an animal that was always going to outrun them, and instead spent hours quietly watching it, learning its path, and turned patience itself into a weapon that could feed an entire group while they slept.